In March of 2021, I posted a video titled, "Rentbacks are bad for both buyers and sellers." Well, since then, the Washington State Legislature amended the Landlord Tenant Act, and I would no longer say that rentbacks are bad. Now, I'd say they're disastrous. Hi, I'm BobWoolverton. I'm with Pure Real Estate in Bellevue, Washington. Here on YouTube, I'm known as your Northwest Realty Advisor. I'm the one real estate agent who invites competition. I tell everyone, if you're going to hire a real estate agent to help you buy or sell your home, always interview at least 3 real estate agents. And always make sure one of those 3 agents is me. I'm the one agent who invites competition. And if I don't earn your business during that interview, then I don't deserve your business. When we come back after this short break, I'll explain what has changed in the Washington State Landlord Tenant Act and how it affects you as a home buyer if your seller is asking for a rent back. Because now all of the risk and all of the liability is placed squarely upon the shoulders of the buyer. Stick around and find out just how bad of an idea a rent back can become for a home buyer. The important thing to know is when you purchase a home, you enter into a purchase and sale agreement that delineates all of the terms and all of the deadlines and everything else related to the transaction of buying a home. But as soon as the deal closes, as soon as you have recording numbers from the county, that contract is done. Now, if during the process of buying your home, the seller asks for a rent back, in essence they need an extra week or 2 or a month or 2 to find a new home, and they want to rent the home from you for that day or 2 or that month or 2, under Washington state law, you instantly become a landlord. You are no longer a buyer. You are a landlord. Even if the seller only rents your home for an hour, and even if you say they can stay the extra day or 2 rent-free, in the eyes of the law, you are still a landlord. And what has changed this year is the just cause provisions in the Washington State Landlord Tenant Act. If you want to do your own research, you can find the new just cause provisions under RCW 59.18.650. And it's a large, complicated section. So regardless of how long the seller rents from you, and regardless if they pay rent or not, if they refuse to move out or refuse to pay rent, you as the landlord are subject to these new just cause provisions and the related timelines. And the new timelines are much longer now. Previously, even with no cause, as a landlord, you could merely give a tenant a 20-day eviction notice before starting the eviction process. A 20-day notice provision doesn't exist anymore. Any rental agreement under 6 months, and most rent backs are for way less time than 6 months. As the landlord, you can only terminate the agreement under the specified conditions under the just cause provision. For example, let's say you have a 2-week rent back, and the seller fails to move out after the 2 weeks. You have to find one of the just cause elements to evict the tenant. But the fact that you want to occupy the residence for yourself is indeed one of the just cause reasons. So you're safe in that regard. But under the new law, you have to give the tenant 90 days notice to vacate. This means now you have to wait an additional 90 days before you can start an eviction process. 90 days before you even file an eviction action in court. So what was supposed to be a 2-week rent back is now a 3.5-month ordeal before you can even start a court process. And the average length of time for the court process is about another 60 days on top of that. So now we're up to 6 months. 6 months of you making your new mortgage payment for a home you don't even occupy yet and may not be receiving any rent for either. Then to layer on top of the state law, you also have to take into consideration new local housing laws that add completely different criteria. For example, some cities now require a property to be registered with them as a rental property before any notice can be served on a tenant. So even the act of serving the notice can be a violation of the local municipal ordinance, exposing the landlord to additional liability. And many municipalities have enacted additional regulations on landlords, and many more are jumping on the bandwagon, adopting similar legislation. Bellingham, Seattle, Tacoma have already adopted additional layers of legislation, as well as King County. And Pierce County is preparing to do the same also, which will cover areas in the unincorporated portions of each county. So, regarding whatever notice you may deliver to your tenant, it has to navigate and comply with not only the state law, but also any additional local ordinance that may or may not be in place for that specific residence. Then additionally, if there is a technical error in the verbiage of the notice or in the delivery process, Washington State has made it very clear that landlords, when they are initiating this process, have to adhere to very strict compliance requirements, meaning dotting every I and crossing every T, and regardless of how long you've waited to initiate this process, if there is any technical error, the entire process is considered invalid, and the clock starts all over again. And the bigger issue here is this. There is a new provision in the law that gives the tenant a right of action against the landlord if the landlord tries to serve any of these notices and does any of these things incorrectly. The new law says if a landlord delivers a faulty notice, the tenant can come back and sue the landlord for economic damages, non-economic damages, 3 times the monthly rent, and attorney's fees. And that's even if the tenant vacates voluntarily, assuming the landlord did start a process correctly. And if that's not enough, there are attorneys who are going through court files of evictions that have already concluded, looking for technical errors so they can harvest the former tenant as a new client and bring a damages claim against the landlord. Now, let's assume the seller does not pay you the rent they agreed to pay. Well, the new law adds yet another layer of complexity and requires mandatory mediation for any non-payment of rent. In this case, you can serve the tenant with a 14-day pay or vacate notice coupled with mandatory mediation paperwork that gives the tenant contact information and the ability to reach out to the local dispute resolution center to engage in a mandatory mediation process. But before you can do any of this in response to non-payment of rent, the state law now requires you as the landlord to offer the tenant a reasonable repayment plan before you can do any of this regarding mediation, including before even serving the 14-day pay or vacate notice. And then you can only serve the 14-day pay or vacate notice if the tenant fails to respond to your offer of a reasonable repayment plan or you can't reach an agreement on the payment plan. And all of this I've just mentioned is just the tip of the iceberg. But think about this for a moment. Let's assume the seller is asking for a 2-week or 4-week rent back. Immediately, you become a landlord. You are no longer a home buyer. You are a landlord and are bound by the terms of the Washington State Landlord Tenant Act, as well as additional local ordinances. Then if the seller refuses to move out, then you have to give 90 days notice. Then go to court, which could add another 60 days as well, and attorney's fees. And then even if you're successful in court, then you have to get the local sheriff's office to enforce the eviction. And as an example, let's say the home's located in King County. You can see here on the King County Sheriff's website, they need approximately 40 days to serve and enforce the eviction notice, and there will be additional fees that you will need to pay for that also. And also notice, if your court order does not have the exact verbiage the sheriff's office requires to be contained in the order, and you can see what the website says right here, your order will likely not be enforced. So let's add up the timeline to see where we are. Assuming a 2-week rent back, 90-day eviction notice, 60-day court process, 40 days for the sheriff's office, now we're up to 204 days, which is more than 29 weeks, which is more than 7 months. And after all that time and all the expense of attorney's fees and the mortgage payments you've been making, the sheriff's office may refuse to serve your eviction order. My job as your real estate agent is to keep you out of court. My philosophy is if you go to court, and even if you prevail by getting a judgment in your favor, you've still lost. Because of all the stress, all the expense, of the time lost getting that verdict, it is better to have never stepped a foot in the courtroom at all. And that's why I believe the best service I can provide to my clients is to keep them out of court in the first place. And one of the ways I can do that is to recommend, as a buyer, you never enter into a rent-back agreement. And even if you think you're willing to take that risk, I will still recommend you consult an attorney that specializes in the Landlord Tenant Act. And if you're still motivated to proceed after that, then have the attorney draft you a rental agreement that may contain new provisions regarding the new just cause elements in the newly amended Landlord Tenant Act. Well, that music means we're out of time for today. I hope you found value in today's video, and if you did, please click that like button and share this video with your friends and family. If you have a real estate question I haven't already answered on this YouTube channel, please put your question in the comments below, and I'll make a video specifically to answer your question. Because if it's a question you have, there's probably many other people who have the exact same question they'd like to get an answer to also. If you'd like to contact me, all of my contact information is in the description box below. I'm Bob Woolverton. I'm with Pure Real Estate in Bellevue, Washington. Here on YouTube, I'm known as your Northwest Realty Advisor. I'm the one real estate agent who invites competition. I tell everyone, if you're going to hire a real estate agent to help you buy or sell your home, always interview at least 3 real estate agents, and always make sure one of those 3 agents is me. I'm the one agent who invites competition. And if I don't earn your business during that interview, then I don't deserve your business. And every Tuesday morning at 7 a.m., I post new videos on this YouTube channel about buying, selling, or investing in real estate, as well as some home tours and listing videos. I'll look forward to seeing you next week.